Welcome to the channel, everyone. Relationships with in-laws, particularly the classic mother-in-law dynamic, are a timeless topic, especially when adorable grandchildren enter the picture. Today, we're going to listen to a story that perhaps many of us have experienced or witnessed. On one hand, there's her boundless love for her grandchild. On the other, the parents' worries and personal rules. Is setting such boundaries necessary, or are we unintentionally hurting family feelings? Is this decision reasonable, or perhaps a bit selfish? Coming up next, we invite you to follow the story in detail to get a more multifaceted perspective. And don't forget, if you find this story interesting or relatable, please hit the like button and share this video with your friends and family. Especially, leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts on this situation.
In a cozy, cluttered apartment in Atlanta, Georgia, Emma Carter sat cross-legged on the living room floor surrounded by a sea of baby blankets, burp cloths, and half-empty coffee mugs. The late afternoon sun filtered through the blinds, casting warm stripes across the hardwood floor where her 5-week-old son Jacob lay nestled in her arms. His tiny chest rose and fell with each soft breath, his face peaceful as he nursed his small hand curled against her skin. Emma's hazel eyes, rimmed with exhaustion, softened as she looked at him. Jacob was her third child, but the wonder of holding him never faded. He was exclusively breastfed, refusing bottles with a stubbornness that made Emma both proud and weary. If she stepped out of the room for more than a few minutes, his wails would pierce the air, a reminder of how deeply he depended on her. At 30, Emma was no stranger to motherhood. Her older children, Mia and Ethan, were with their father for the weekend, giving her a rare moment of quiet to focus on Jacob. But the calm was deceptive. In 2 days, her mother-in-law, Marlene Lewis, would arrive from Jamaica to meet her first grandchild, and the thought sent a knot of anxiety twisting in Emma's stomach. Marlene had been texting Jaden, Emma's husband, with plans that made Emma's heart race. She wanted to take Jacob out for an entire day alone to show him off around Atlanta. The idea was unthinkable. Jacob wouldn't take a bottle ride when Emma was out of sight and had never been anywhere without her. The notion of handing him over to someone he'd never met in a city Marlene barely knew felt like a betrayal of her instincts. Emma shifted Jacob to her shoulder, patting his back gently as she glanced at the kitchen where Jaden was chopping vegetables for dinner. At 32, Jaden was a striking figure, tall with deep brown eyes and a warm smile that had first drawn Emma to him 5 years ago. Born and raised in Kingston, Jamaica, he'd moved to the States for work, but carried his culture proudly from the reggae music that filled their apartment to the spicy jerk chicken he cooked on weekends. Emma loved his passion, but lately their differences felt like a chasm. Jaden's phone buzzed on the counter, and he answered it in rapid patois, his voice animated as he spoke to his mother. Emma couldn't follow the conversation, and the language barrier made her feel like an outsider in her own home. She stood cradling Jacob and crossed to the kitchen. "Jaden, can we talk?" she asked, keeping her voice low to avoid waking the baby. He set the phone down, his expression a mix of affection and distraction. "Sure, babe." "What's up?" Emma hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "It's about your mom's visit. She keeps saying she wants to take Jacob out all day by herself. I'm not comfortable with that. He's only 5 weeks old and he needs me." Jaden's brow furrowed, and he set the knife down, wiping his hands on a dish towel. "Emma, she's just excited. It's her first grandbaby. She wants to show him off. You know, it's a big deal for her." His tone was reasonable, but Emma felt a spark of frustration. "I get that, Jaden, but he doesn't take a bottle. He cries if I'm not in the room. And she doesn't even know Atlanta. She hasn't told us where she's staying or where she plans to go. It's too much." Jaden sighed, leaning against the counter. "She's not going to do anything crazy, Emma. She raised me, didn't she? She knows how to handle a baby." His words carried a hint of defensiveness, and Emma's chest tightened. This isn't about her ability to handle a baby. she said, her voice rising slightly. It's about what Jacob needs. He's not ready to be away from me for a whole day. And honestly, I don't know why she insists on doing it without me. Jaden's phone buzzed again and he glanced at it, his jaw tightening. She says you're being selfish, he said, his voice low. She thinks you're trying to keep Jacob from her. And I'm starting to wonder if she's right. The words hit Emma like a slap, and she took a step back, clutching Jacob closer. Selfish, she repeated, her voice trembling. Jaden, I'm his mother. I'm trying to protect him. Nobody on my side of the family has taken him alone. Why should your mom get to take him all over the city when he's this little? Jaden ran a hand over his face, his frustration evident. Because she's family, Emma. She's not some stranger. And in my culture, grandparents are a big deal. They're part of raising the kids. You're acting like she's going to kidnap him or something. His words stung, and Emma's mind flashed to the conversations they'd had during her pregnancy, when Jaden had repeatedly suggested having Jacob born in Jamaica so he could learn his roots. She'd dismissed it as impractical, but now, with Marlene's insistence and Jaden's defensiveness, a seed of doubt took root. What if they were planning something behind her back? I'm not saying she's a stranger, Emma said, her voice steady, despite the fear creeping in. But I don't know her well. I've only met her once, Jaden, and that was years ago. She's acting like I don't know what's best for my own baby, and you're taking her side. Jacob stirred in her arms, letting out a small whimper, and Emma rocked him gently, her eyes locked on Jaden's. I'm happy for her to spend time with him, but I need to be there, at least until he's older. Jaden shook his head, his voice sharp. Emma, I won't be with someone who keeps my mom from my son. That's not fair to her, or to me. The ultimatum hung in the air, heavy and cold. Emma's heart pounded, her exhaustion amplifying the hurt. She wanted to scream, to demand how he could choose his mother's feelings over hers, but Jacob's soft cooing grounded her. She took a deep breath, her voice low but firm. I'm not keeping anyone from him. I'm protecting him. And if you can't see that, then we've got a bigger problem than your mom's visit. The apartment fell silent. The only sound, the faint hum of the refrigerator and Jacob's gentle breathing. Jaden looked away, his shoulders tense, and Emma felt a pang of loneliness. She loved Jaden, loved the life they were building, but the gap between their worlds, her American pragmatism, his Caribbean roots, had never felt wider. As she carried Jacob to his crib, her mind raced with questions. Was she being overprotective, or were her instincts screaming for a reason? Marlene's arrival loomed like a storm on the horizon, and Emma knew the next few days would test her strength as a mother and her trust in her family. The Atlanta sun rose with a gentle warmth, painting the apartment in soft golds, as Emma Carter swayed in the rocking chair, Jacob nestled against her chest. His tiny breaths were rhythmic, a small comfort amidst the storm brewing in her mind. Marlene Lewis, her mother-in-law, would arrive tomorrow, and the tension from her argument with Jaden still lingered like a bruise. Emma hadn't slept more than a few hours in weeks, her body aching from the demands of new motherhood, but it was the emotional weight that felt heaviest. Jaden's words, I won't be with someone who keeps my mom from my son, echoed in her head, each syllable a jab at her confidence. She wasn't trying to keep Jacob from Marlene. She was trying to protect him. But the doubt Jaden had planted, coupled with Marlene's insistence on taking Jacob alone, made Emma question herself. Was she being selfish? Or was her gut screaming for a reason? Jaden was in the kitchen brewing coffee, the rich aroma mingling with the faint scent of baby powder that now defined their home. He'd been quieter since their fight, his usual warmth tempered by a stiffness Emma couldn't ignore. She wanted to bridge the gap, to explain her fears without sounding paranoid, but every time she opened her mouth, the words felt inadequate. How could she convey the primal need to keep Jacob close, especially when Jaden seemed so quick to side with his mother? The cultural divide between them, her rootedness in Atlanta's pragmatic suburban life, his pride in his Jamaican heritage, had always been a point of curiosity, even charm. But now it felt like a wall. Emma adjusted Jacob, who stirred with a soft whimper, and carried him to the kitchen. "Jaden," she said, her voice low to avoid waking the baby. "Can we talk about tomorrow? I just want to make sure we're on the same page about your mom's visit." Jaden turned, his dark eyes meeting hers, but there was a guardedness in his expression. "I'm listening," he said, pouring coffee into a mug. Emma took a deep breath. "I'm not trying to keep Jacob from her. I just need to know where she's planning to take him, how long she'll have him, and how we'll handle it if he gets fussy. He doesn't take a bottle and he cries when I'm not around. I'm not saying no to her spending time with him. I just need to be there." Jaden set the mug down, his jaw tightening. "Emma, you're acting like my mom's some kind of threat." "She's not. She's been texting me about how excited she is to meet Jacob, to take him to the park, maybe show him off to some friends she's got here. It's what grandparents do in Jamaica, they're hands-on. You're making it sound like she's going to run off with him." His tone was sharp, and Emma felt a familiar pang of frustration. "I'm not saying she's a threat," she said, her voice rising slightly, before she caught herself. "But she's never met Jacob. She doesn't know how he is. And she's not telling us anything specific, just that she wants him for a whole day without me." "That doesn't feel right, Jaden," he sighed, running a hand over his close-cropped hair. "She's not great at details, okay? That's just how she is. But she loves Jacob already. She's been sending me baby clothes, Jamaican lullabies, all that stuff. Maybe if you gave her a chance, you'd see she's not out to hurt anyone." Emma's chest tightened, the weight of his words pressing down. She wanted to trust Marlene, but the lack of communication, the language barrier, and Jaden's insistence on his mother's way of doing things made her feel cornered. "I want to give her a chance," she said, her voice softer now. "But I need you to back me up. I'm his mom, Jaden. My instincts are telling me he's not ready to be away from me. Can you at least try to understand that?" Jaden hesitated, his eyes softening for a moment before his phone buzzed again. He glanced at it, and Emma caught a glimpse of a message in patois before he turned the screen away. "She's landing tomorrow afternoon," he said, changing the subject. "I'll pick her up from the airport. Let's just keep the peace, all right?" Emma nodded, but the unease in her gut grew. She carried Jacob back to the living room, her mind racing. Was she overreacting, or was there something more to Marlene's plans? The next day, the apartment was a flurry of preparation. Emma tidied up as best she could, shoving toys into baskets and wiping down counters, though the exhaustion of new motherhood made every task feel monumental. Jacob, sensing her tension, was fussier than usual, his cries sharp and insistent whenever she tried to set him down. By the time Jaden returned with Marlene, Emma was a bundle of nerves, her hair pulled into a messy bun, her t-shirt stained with spit up. Marlene burst through the door like a tropical storm, her colorful headscarf and wide smile filling the room with energy. She carried a large woven bag stuffed with gifts, tiny onesies with Jamaican flags, a jar of homemade jerk sauce, and a wooden rattle she'd carved herself. "Emma, me dear," she exclaimed, her accent thick and melodic as she pulled Emma into a hug. "Where's me grandbaby?" Her enthusiasm was infectious, but Emma's smile was strained as she gestured to Jacob, who was nestled in a bassinet by the couch. Marlene's eyes lit up, and she crossed the room in 2 strides, cooing in patois as she peered at the baby. "Oh, him a beauty, Jaden. Him look just like you when you was a baby." Emma watched, her heart softening at Marlene's joy, but her guard stayed up. Marlene reached for Jacob, and Emma instinctively stepped closer. "He's a bit fussy today," she said, trying to keep her tone light. "He's been nursing a lot." Marlene waved a hand dismissively. "Fussy, all babies fussy. You just gotta let him get used to his grandma." She lifted Jacob from the bassinet, and within seconds his face crumpled, a wail piercing the air. Emma's heart raced as she reached for him, but Marlene rocked him, singing softly in patois. Jacob's cries only grew louder, and Emma gently took him back, her hands trembling. He needs to nurse, she said, her voice firm but polite. Marlene's smile faltered, and she glanced at Jaden, who looked uncomfortable, but said nothing. The tension simmered as the evening unfolded. Marlene unpacked her gifts, filling the apartment with stories of Jamaica, how she'd raised Jaden single-handedly, how babies there were passed around the community loved by everyone. Emma nodded politely, but each story felt like a subtle critique of her parenting. When Marlene suggested not for the first time that Emma try a bottle so she could have some freedom, Emma's patience frayed. "He doesn't take a bottle," she said, her voice clipped. "He only nurses and he gets upset if I'm not close. I'm not trying to keep him from you, Marlene, but he's not ready to be away from me." Marlene's eyes narrowed, and she switched to patois, speaking rapidly to Jaden. Emma caught only fragments too attached, not good for D-baby, and her stomach churned. Jaden translated his voice hesitant. "She says in Jamaica, babies learn to be with family early. It's how we build community. She thinks you're holding on too tight." Emma's face flushed, and she stood cradling Jacob. "I'm not holding on too tight," she said, her voice shaking. "I'm doing what's best for him. He's 5 weeks old, Marlene. He needs me. And I need to know where you're planning to take him if you want him for a whole day." Marlene crossed her arms, her expression hardening. "You think I don't know how to care for a baby? I raised Jaden and him turn out fine. You acting like you don't trust me, like I'm gonna hurt me own grandbaby." The accusation stung, and Emma's eyes filled with tears. "It's not about trust," she said. "It's about what Jacob needs. You don't know Atlanta, and you haven't told us anything about your plans. I can't just hand him over without knowing where he'll be." Jaden stepped between them, his hands raised. "All right, let's calm down. Ma, Emma's just worried because Jacob's so young. Ma's not trying to take him away. She just wants to spend time with him." But his attempt at mediation fell flat. Marlene huffed, muttering something in patois, and Emma felt a surge of isolation. She was in her own home, yet she felt like an outsider caught between Jaden's loyalty to his mother and her own instincts as a mother. That night, as Emma lay awake, Jacob sleeping fitfully beside her, she overheard Jaden and Marlene talking in the guest room. Their voices were low, but the words, Jamaica, and when he's older, drifted through the walls. Emma's heart raced, her earlier fears resurfacing. During her pregnancy, Jaden had pushed for Jacob to be born in Jamaica, a plan she'd dismissed as impractical. Now, with Marlene's insistence and Jaden's evasiveness, she couldn't shake the thought that they were planning something maybe not now but in the future. The idea of Jacob being taken to Jamaica away from her sent a chill down her spine. The next morning, Emma called her own mother, Linda, hoping for support. Linda listened patiently, but offered little reassurance. "Honey, you're exhausted," she said over the phone. "Maybe you're reading too much into this. Marlene's just excited. Let her have some time with Jacob. You'll be there, right? It'll be fine." Emma hung up, feeling more alone than ever. Her mother meant well, but she didn't understand the depth of Emma's fear the way her instincts screamed that something wasn't right. The tension came to a head the following day, when Marlene announced her plan to take Jacob to Piedmont Park, a sprawling green space in the heart of Atlanta. "I want to show him dye trees. Dye flowers?" she said, her voice bright but firm. "Just me and him. You stay here, Emma, get some rest." Emma's heart pounded and she shook her head. "No, Marlene. If you want to take him to the park, I'm coming with you. He's not ready to be without me, and I don't know the park well enough to feel safe with you taking him alone." Her voice was steady, but inside she was shaking. Marlene's face darkened and she turned to Jaden. "You hear this? She don't trust me. She tink, I can't handle me own grandbaby." Jaden's eyes darted between his mother and Emma, his expression torn. "Emma, come on," he said, his voice low. "It's just a park. She's not going to disappear with him." But Emma stood her ground, Jacob fussing in her arms. "I'm not saying she'll disappear," she said, her voice rising. "But I'm his mother, and I'm saying no. If she wants to see him, it's with me there, or not at all." The words landed like a thunderclap. Marlene gasped, her hand flying to her chest, and Jaden's face hardened. Emma, you can't mean that, he said, his voice low and warning. You're saying my mom can't see her grandson? That's too far. Emma's eyes filled with tears, but she held Jacob closer, her resolve unwavering. I'm protecting him, Jaden, and if you can't see that, then I don't know how we move forward. The room fell silent, the weight of Emma's ultimatum hanging heavy. Marlene stared at her, her expression a mix of hurt and defiance, while Jaden stood frozen caught between the two women he loved. Emma's heart pounded her instincts, screaming that she was right to stand her ground, but the fear of fracturing her family gnawed at her. The park, the plans, the secrets, they were all leading to a breaking point, and Emma wasn't sure she was ready for what came next. The air in the Atlanta apartment felt thick, charged with the weight of unspoken words and clashing emotions. Emma Carter stood in the living room, clutching Jacob to her chest, his soft whimpers a quiet counterpoint to the storm brewing between her Jaden and Marlene. Her ultimatum, if she wants to see him, it's with me there or not, at all hung in the air like a thunderclap, its echoes reverberating in the stunned silence. Marlene's eyes widened, her hand still pressed to her chest, her vibrant energy replaced by a mix of hurt and indignation. Jaden's face was a mask of conflict, his jaw tight, his gaze flickering between his wife and his mother. Emma's heart pounded her resolve, as a mother anchoring her, even as fear of fracturing her family gnawed at her core. Emma, you can't be serious, Jaden said, his voice low, almost pleading. You're saying my mom can't see her grandson? That's not fair. His words carried a trace of desperation, and Emma felt a pang of guilt, but her instincts screamed louder. Jacob needed her. His cries, his dependence on her breast, his tiny body seeking her comfort were undeniable. And Marlene's refusal to share details, coupled with Jaden's evasiveness about their plans for Jamaica, fueled a fear Emma couldn't shake. She took a deep breath, steadying herself. I'm serious, Jaden, she said, her voice trembling but firm. I'm not trying to keep her from Jacob, but I'm his mother, and I get to decide what's best for him. Right now, that means I need to be there. If you or your mom can't respect that, then we've got a problem. Marlene let out a sharp exhale, her arms crossing tightly. You think I'm some kind of stranger, Emma. I'm his grandma. I carry Jaden in my belly, raise him through everything, hurricanes, hard times, all of it. You think I don't know how to care for a baby? Her voice was thick with emotion, her Jamaican accent sharpening with each word. Emma's chest tightened, the accusation hitting a nerve. This isn't about you knowing how to care for a baby, she said, rocking Jacob gently as his cries grew louder. It's about what Jacob needs. He's 5 weeks old. He doesn't know you yet. And you don't know Atlanta. You haven't told us where you're staying, where you're going, or how you'll handle it if he gets upset. I can't just hand him over without knowing. Jaden stepped forward, his hands raised in a futile attempt to calm the storm. All right, both of you. Let's take a step back, he said. His voice strained. Ma Emma's just worried, because Jacob's so attached to her. Emma Ma's not trying to take him away. She just wants to bond with him. But his words felt hollow, caught in the crossfire of two women whose love for Jacob was fierce, but expressed in clashing ways. Marlene shook her head, muttering in patois, and Emma caught fragments she don't trust my too controlling that deepened her sense of isolation. She wanted to scream to demand why this had to be so hard, but Jacob's cries anchored her, a reminder of what mattered most. The standoff might have continued spiraling into further hurt if Jacob hadn't escalated his wails into a full-blown meltdown. His tiny face reddened, his fists flailing, and Emma's heart sank. She moved to the couch, settling in to nurse him, her eyes avoiding Marlene and Jaden. The room fell quiet save for Jacob's softening whimpers as he latched on. Marlene watched, her expression softening, the fire in her eyes, giving way to something gentler. Jaden sank into a chair, rubbing his temples, the weight of the moment pressing down on him. It was Jaden who broke the silence, his voice low but resolute. We need to talk this out, he said, looking between Emma and Marlene. Not like this, not yelling at each other. Ma, you're staying for a week. We've got time to figure this out. But Emma's right. Jacob's not ready to be away from her. And we need to respect that. Emma looked up, surprised by the shift in his tone. For the first time, he seemed to see her fear, not just his mother's excitement. Marlene's shoulders slumped, and she sat on the edge of the couch, her woven bag of gifts at her feet. I don't want to fight, she said, her voice quieter now. I just want to love me grandbaby. In Jamaica, we pass babies around family neighbors. Everybody hold 'em, loved 'em. I thought it'd be the same here. Her words carried a vulnerability Emma hadn't expected, and for a moment she saw Marlene not as a threat, but as a grandmother eager to connect, shaped by a culture Emma didn't fully understand. Emma took a deep breath, her anger softening as Jacob's cries faded. I want you to love him, Marlene, she said, her voice steady. And I want him to know you, to know your culture. But he's so little right now. He needs me close, and I need to know he's safe. If we can work together, maybe go to the park as a family, stay in places where I can nurse him. I'd love for you to spend time with him. She hesitated, then added, I'm not trying to control things. I'm just trying to be his mom. Marlene nodded slowly, her eyes fixed on Jacob. I see him crying like that, she said, her voice soft. I don't want him to be upset. Maybe I pushed too hard. She looked at Emma, her expression earnest. I tell you where I stay, the hotel by the airport. And if we go to D Park, you come. We do it together. The concession was small but significant, and Emma felt a flicker of relief. It wasn't a full resolution, but it was a start. Jaden, sensing the shift, stood and crossed to Emma, kneeling beside her. I'm sorry, he said, his voice low. I should have listened to you from the start. I got caught up in what Ma wanted, and I didn't see how scared you were. I'm with you, Emma. We'll figure this out together. His hand rested on hers, warm and reassuring, and Emma felt tears prick her eyes. For the first time in days, she didn't feel alone. The next afternoon, the family ventured to Piedmont Park, the sprawling green heart of Atlanta, buzzing with joggers, families, and street musicians. Emma pushed Jacob's stroller, the late summer breeze ruffling the blanket draped over him. Marlene walked beside her, pointing out the dogwood trees and laughing as she described how she'd chased Jaden through similar parks in Kingston. Jaden trailed behind, carrying a picnic bag filled with Marlene's homemade jerk chicken and Emma's favorite sweet tea, a small gesture of unity. When Jacob fussed, Emma paused to nurse him under a shaded tree, and Marlene sat nearby, humming a Jamaican lullaby. The moment was quiet, unforced, and Emma felt a cautious hope take root. That evening, back in the apartment, the air felt lighter. Marlene sat on the couch, holding Jacob, now calm with Emma nearby, and told stories of Jaden's childhood, her laughter filling the room. Jaden translated, bridging the gap between patois and English, and Emma listened, asking questions about Jamaica, about the family she was now part of. She realized she'd been so focused on protecting Jacob that she'd overlooked the richness Marlene brought, the stories, the traditions, the love. And Marlene, in turn, seemed to see Emma's protectiveness not as control, but as devotion. As the week progressed, Emma and Marlene found a rhythm. They visited a local market together, Marlene teaching Emma how to pick the best mangoes, while Emma shared tips for navigating Atlanta's traffic. Jaden, relieved to see the tension ease, promised to be more open about his hopes for Jacob's connection to Jamaica, assuring Emma that any future trips would be a family decision. The fear of secret plans faded, replaced by a fragile but growing trust. On Marlene's last night, the family sat in the living room, the glow of a single lamp casting warmth across the cluttered space. Marlene held Jacob, singing softly in patois, her voice a soothing melody. Emma leaned against Jaden, her exhaustion tempered by a quiet peace. She thought of the past week, the fear, the fights, the slow steps toward understanding. Protecting Jacob had meant standing her ground, but it also meant opening her heart to Marlene's love, to Jaden's heritage. As Marlene's song ended, Emma smiled, her voice a whisper in her mind. Sometimes protecting your child means opening your heart to others, even when it's hard.